Hey guys, welcome back to Shredcraft RC. I'm Cam, and today I wanted to do a how-to video on customizing your RC car. And more specifically in this video, I'm going to be working on the Vanquish Products H10 Optic kit. So let's say you just got a set of panels and you're not quite happy with the color you received. There's a simple way to totally customize it, and this will go for any RC car, using vinyl. Now, this is an automotive wrap film, and I've actually been in the vinyl wrap industry for over 7 years now, and I've done thousands of cars and thousands of different projects. So one thing I wanted to kind of share with you guys is some of my tips and tricks in how to get the best result when you're vinyl wrapping any of your RC cars. The H10 Optic is a pretty simple, straightforward kit, how most of the panels are flat. But like on the hood here, there's a few areas that might be difficult or pose some challenges to somebody who's just getting into customizing their RC car. So along with just wrapping the panels, I also wanted to show you some of my design process and creating a livery to go onto this awesome truck. So I have this thing all stripped down, and I've actually added some Mile High RC LED lights. I made my own set of front headlights, and then I have a rear set in the back kind of hidden up here that it's not really a rock light, it's more kind of like underglow for the RC car. So tying into that, I had this really cool 3M iridescent green, or it's like a metallic green. I'm going to be wrapping the body panels with that, along with that creating a livery. So I've already kind of gone and cut some of my logos and stuff out of chrome gold, and then I'll take you over and show you my plotter, because that's one of the most asked questions I get is what kind of plotter do I use. And I know a lot of people out there have Crickets or Cameo silhouettes, but I've been doing this for a long time, and I still have my original plotter I got 15 plus years ago, and it still works great. I'll bring you guys over to the computer, show you kind of how I design and brainstorm some of the designs I make, and then I will give you the tips on wrapping these panels. So let's get to it. Starting off, one of the first things I'll do, I'm back here in my trusty optic notebook, but I'll go ahead and take measurements of all the panels that I'll need to cover, and that goes back to the real car world too. This will give me an estimate on how much material I will be needing for each panel, and then I can also transfer these into the computer here. Part of this, when I'm brainstorming, I'll set up a color palette and kind of use some of the colors that maybe a vinyl that I have, transfer some of my measurements into some of the shapes I'm going to want to be making. That's just the rough start here. And then I have the shapes of the solid panels, and this is also very rough. These are just kind of estimates, and I can use these and make them with bleed so that when I'm going to wrap the panels here, I'll be able to wrap over the edges. So when the panel's sitting flat, you're not going to see any of the base color showing through. So I'll go ahead and take you over to my cutting computer, where I'll set up my cut files for making the graphics. Bam. So this is a very old MacBook Pro, still works great. I think it's from like 2014. And this is called Easy Cut Studio. So what I'll do here is, this all works off vector-based graphics. So SVG files or EPS files, scale vector graphic files. And you can see I kind of have my ideas here laid out. So this file is essentially the chrome that I cut out earlier. And from that file, since I know I'm going to want these graphics and I've measured them for the size of the doors and stuff like that, I went and I made shadow layers of each of these graphics that I cut in black, and that was this previous file. So these are basically strokes that chrome gold will go onto, and I cut those out of some satin black. So that way when I put the chrome graphics on top of the black, they're going to stand out some more. You can kind of see there, these will all line up with a small black stroke on there. That's going to give it a better look on top of the green, rather than just putting a straight gold on top, which this may have enough contrast to look good, but the black stroke is going to make it pop and look like a real sticker. So on here, what I'll show you how I cut is these are some of the shapes that I made where I'm not sure I'm going to be using this full hood file, but maybe these wings on the side so it covers the panel right where it rolls over on the hood, and then having these shapes go from the door back. So then I know from looking at this body that this part of the hood rolls over to this part of the front part of the door panel. And then this would be like a roof panel, and I'd still need to take some measurements because where the roof rolls over, I was thinking of having a white line across and then having the white go back on the top. So then that way, when the roof is on the car here, these white stripes that will come back from the top will tie in from the white stripes on top of the door, making this part of the truck look like it has a white section with the green in the middle. I was planning on having the rad hand on top here and then the Shredcraft logos in the middle of the door between these stripes here. So the reason I kind of set this up too is because I have some very durable vinyl that's meant for ATVs and off-road cars, and after running the Optic a few times, I've noticed that the bottom here gets scratched up, and I've seen some people making some 3D printed skid files and stuff like that, along with the front of the hood getting dinged up, and then the sides of the roof and stuff when it rolls over. So these I'm going to cut out of a super durable ATV vinyl, and then in theory that's going to help protect the edges. It is vinyl, so it is going to scratch and stuff when it gets on rocks, but your normal automotive film is very thin and pliable, designed to go around edges, where this other stuff's meant to be flat. It's what I've wrapped a bunch of snowmobiles and stuff like that with. So when you're going through the woods, trees are brushing up against it and scratching it. It's going to hold up rather than just tearing like this vinyl would. So I'll take you down to my plotter and we'll get these files cut. Down here at my plotter, this is a GCC Great Cut 24. So it's 24 inches wide, able to cut some pretty good big stuff on that. And then I have this Cameo Silhouette, something I'll use for smaller stuffs time to time, or I'll do print cut graphics on this. But this is my satin white. This is super thick ATV film, and what I'm going to do is load that into my plotter here, and then I have these roller wheels and these white marks that will determine where the blade will cut in between. And since this stuff is thick, this is going to be a learning experience for both of us. So I'm going to click down these wheels in the back and then fire it up, and it's going to run registration on the edges of these wheels to tell me on the computer how big I can cut. So I modified the file a little. Here we go. There, it's doing its thing. Sometimes I'll hold it down so it doesn't catch. So now it's registered edge to edge where I'm able to cut. And then I'll come down on my file and I'll double check sizing, which I've already done. And then I can go up to my cut here. And I know that this stuff's significantly thicker, so I'm going to turn the pressure up a little bit. Normally a smart person would do a test cut where you just cut a little square and then you're able to see if it peels easily. This, I know I'm not going to touch the vinyl, and I've used this machine a lot, so I kind of have an idea. So I'm going to send that, and then this is going to start cutting. So simple like that, and then this is going to be hard to show on camera, but I can kind of see that it might not have gone all the way through. So I may run it again just to get those lines a little deeper, and I'll show you guys what it looks like when I get these peeled up. Here are the shapes all cut out. I think I underestimated just how tough that vinyl was. So I had to go through and hand trim it with the score lines that the plotter made. But yeah, this stuff, it's going to be hard to tell on camera, but you can't even dig your fingernail into it. It's very tough. So a couple little armor pieces set up there, and then we'll jump into wrapping our first panels here. Just like with painting panels, preparation is going to be the most important thing to make sure you have good adhesion of the vinyl to the surface you're wrapping. This is a smooth plastic. I wouldn't suggest wrapping kind of textured plastic. Vinyl doesn't like ABS normally, but since this is a smooth, polished, glossy surface, I'm going to take some isopropyl alcohol and clean this. I'll do it off camera. And then I'll set the camera up on a tripod over my shoulder, and you'll be able to see the techniques that I use. And like I said before, I'm gonna leave a little bleed to wrap around the edges here. So when you get your sheet of vinyl, usually it comes in rolls. If you were to go to Target or Walmart or buy stuff for your Cricut, it's 12-inch material. So I go ahead and I flip it over, and then I'll give it a, 1/2 inch to 1/4 inch of bleed on all the edges. And then, I've pre-cut all these panels for the doors and such. So that way you kind of know how much material you'll be needing. And one other key is having more than enough in case you make mistakes, especially when you're just starting out, is definitely recommended, because it would really suck to get 3 of these panels done and then not have enough for the 4th. Pre-planning, preparation, prepping the surface, all that stuff is definitely highly recommended, just for a better outcome and a longer lasting product. So get you guys on the tripod and we'll get to sticking. All right, seems like that angle is gonna work. Got this prepped up. Some alcohol, got my vinyl here. Just gonna double check my size is right. Then I'm gonna peel this and commence to laying it down. Just kind of making sure that I have even bleeds on each side. And then I'm just gonna use my squeegee to tack it down. These panels are so small you can really just wipe it with your thumb. And something I always recommend is starting from the center, working your way out. That way you're able to push the air out. And then when I get to the curve, I'm gonna leave that for last. Again, working the air from the center to the outside. And then when I get to the edges here, I'm just gonna give it a little tug and wrap it right to the edge like that. And you can see there's a nice defined edge, and I'm gonna apply pressure to push down right to that edge. Now on the front, we'll see if we can do this. It'll just be material dependent if you need to apply heat, but vinyl and heat definitely are friends. But since there's a point at the bottom here, I'm going to start in the middle again, and I'm going to come straight to the point, and you can see that. And I'm just going to wipe it right there and leave these sections still elevated. So working my way from the center to the outside again. So I'm going to pull this corner this way, and I'm going to pull that corner that way. Again, you can lift up this air release vinyl a bunch and reposition it. It's what it's designed to do. But you can see my wrinkles are going in that direction now. And then the same thing there. And so that didn't really need any heat, just strategic pooling of the film. So one thing vinyl doesn't like to do is go around tight corners like what we have here. So instead of pulling the vinyl straight down and around like that, what I'm going to do is just make a little mark where those are, and then I'm going to take a set of scissors and I'm going to cut a 45-degree angle across that corner. So then I can fold this edge flat down, this edge flat down, and so on around. And I can already tell this is a little much for going around the edge. So I'm also going to cut the excess off, leaving about 1/4 inch or so to wrap around. 45-ish degree cut on the corner. So I've got all those corners cut, and then just pushing down on the edge again, start back on this one since it's nice and straight. Just start working it to the back side. And push it down like so. Now that entire edge is covered, and then I can start working on these ones. Kind of use my fingernail to push it down like that. And I can already tell, since this is a curved panel, I'm going to have a pinch point here. But if you just kind of work it, you can get it to lay down. And that's another thing with vinyl wrapping, is it's definitely takes a lot of patience to get it done properly. There's a lot of frustration, sometimes curse words involved, but that's just kind of part of it. The more you do, the more confident you get. And don't be afraid to lift the vinyl if you get creases or wrinkles. I see some people when they start and they just kind of push the wrinkles back in. I like to make the product, even the parts that people aren't going to be seeing, lay down flat, and that way you have the most adhesive on this material, making the biggest contact patch on the surface area it's gripping onto. So since we have a point here, and I can already tell that it's going to wrinkle if I were just to push it over and do the same, I'm going to grab some heat real quick. You can either use a heat gun, or since these panels are so small, I'm just going to use a lighter. And now the point here isn't to set it on fire, but make the material more pliable. So you can see these wrinkles will kind of mellow themselves out. And once that vinyl is nice and warm, again, I'm going to start on the middle and just kind of set that down, and then work my way from the middle to the outside. And you can kind of see here, maybe I'd overstretch it a little bit, so I picked it back up, and I can heat it back up. And it will help mellow it out. So, when you go around sharp corners, you'll inevitably get creases and wrinkles. So we can trim that away, make a nice straight edge, and then I'll go over my other edges, seal those down. This is called post-heating. So usually if you're going around curves or body lines on more complex shapes, you'll go through and you'll post-heat to make sure there's no more air bubbles under it, especially on corners and stuff. Just kind of wipe those down and seal them. And then we have a wrapped panel. I'll trim this away so you can see what it looks like completed. So, nice clean edges here. And then since we have screw holes, what I'm going to do is a similar process. Just kind of heat those up and push them in. And then I'm going to take my knife. This is a Olfa snap blade. This is kind of like the industry standard for wrapping. A lot of people use custom blades and stuff like that, but these 30-degree points work the best for me. What I'm going to do is just cut a little X in the middle of the circle, and that will give the screw enough room to go through and mount onto the body. So just like that, and we have ourselves a nice wrapped panel. You can kind of see how cool that iridescent metallic green is. So I'm going to whip out the doors really quick, and then when I get to the hood, I'll show you some of the techniques and stuff I use to get around this bump here. Moving on to the hood here, since these edges on the sides roll over, you're just going to want to make sure that you have enough material on both sides to have full coverage and go over to the sides. So I'll take a Sharpie on the back and just kind of make some rough lines of where I'll want to cut. Doesn't need to be fancy. That way I am able to quickly get the size and still kind of conserve some material where I can. Go ahead, get this cleaned up. A little alcohol. Take off any fingerprints, finger grease, anything of that nature that would impair the adhesion of the vinyl. The worst is when you get a panel nearly done and you realize there's a hair under the vinyl and you can see the line. That's always frustrating. So I got my piece cut here, peel it. And I'm just gonna kind of center it up. So where I'm gonna start on this one is this center ridge. That way you don't want to necessarily stretch the vinyl over the recesses, because that stuff will pop back up if it sees heat, sunlight, anything like that in the future. So if I start on the top, I'm able to work the vinyl down and out, down and out. This front has a nice, pretty smooth transition, so I'm able to pull that straight down. So I'm going to put a little bit of tension in it this way and just kind of tack it. Tack, when I say tack, I mean just kind of finger press it so it's going to stay. And then I can define this top hood ridge here. So now that that is down on the hood ridge, what I'm going to do is lift everything back up. And what I like to do sometimes is make sections. So I'm going to work this section that way, this section that way, and this section this way. And how I'm going to start is just by giving it this front section tension this way. So what that's going to do is pull the wrinkles, you can kind of see that way, so I can lift it, pull them the opposite direction. See, there's a crease right there. Gonna lift that back up and pull it the opposite direction. Then I'm going to apply pressure to that front section, and I know there's wheel wells here, so you can kind of define the front. So when I get there, I'm going to lift all of that back up, and I'm just going to focus on this area here to get it flat, so then this is separated and I can work it that way. You'll notice I didn't just lift it and pull everything down, mainly because we're going to want to work this film down that ridge before going over to the side. So just a little bit of heat, and I'm just going to slowly work it down into that crevice. And that way I didn't stretch the film across that. So I can lift it back up, and you can see maybe that is all nice and smooth around that edge. And I'm going to hit this whole piece with some heat. And then that way I can begin to pull this all down. This is where a heat gun might be handy on a larger surface area. But I'm trying to do this with tools that people might have laying around their house. So, just have to get around this final edge. Just going to heat the whole piece again. Get it nice and pliable. And then I'm giving it a little tension, not too much, as I work it down. And then defining the edges there. You can see I got a little tiny bubble there, but I also don't want to stretch it in there. And it's still there. So lift it back up. Little bit of heat to relax it. Push it straight in. And then also in the nose here, little piece goes down, so I'm going to heat that whole corner. Just kind of pull it down and around. Now, sometimes before I start on the other side, I'll remove some of the excess and work this half of the edges down, just so if it were to pop back up, I'm not going to pull up half the wrap. Again, 45-degree cut on all the corners will help me fold it around. Just going to work it over. And then since we have the wheel well there, I'm gonna kind of make a concave cut, a couple of relief cuts into that indent where the shock will go. Sometimes a knife will be more accurate. That way I can hit this backside with a little heat, and I'm able to smoothly work it around. So then this whole side's nice and locked in, and at the end I'll go through and post heat, but what I did do is push the film down a little too much there, so I'm going to try to pop this up and then define that edge on the hood scoop. And then I'm going to work that edge just like on this side down first before I stick anything past that point. See, that's nice down into that recess. Then relax the vinyl again. Give it a little tension to get that down. And work it over the edge. This also makes a difference when using a high quality vinyl versus a cheap Chinese film. Cheap Chinese vinyl is usually thicker and it won't have the same properties that say 3M or Avery have when you're using them. So I really love 3M vinyl. It just really works well with heat and repositioning if you have to lift any edges or corners. They also offer warranties on their vinyl, mainly for full wrapped vehicles. This stuff, you know, you're not going to get a warranty on your toy car wrap, but that's why I think it's important to have a good application process. So here in the center hood scoop, I'm going to lift as much as I can up from there. And so none of this is stuck down yet. And what I'm going to do is heat this whole area, start in the corners because that will have the most tension, just like I did on these recessed edges, and work it down into this scoop here, or cowl, however you want to say it. But since it's not such a deep channel, if I start on those corners, there shouldn't be any tension in that vinyl, so it shouldn't pop back up in the future. And then working the air out that way. Then we have the interesting shape finished up there. So I'm going to go through, make my recessed cuts, and then start tucking it over the other side. If you get little fingers like this, you can push them down with the back of your fingernail. And then we have the nubs where the screws go through, so make some relief cuts on that side to free those up and clean up the back side here. There it is, wrapped hood. And then little cleanup work, because if you leave these edges exposed and up, chances are they'll peel back in the future. So I'm just going to put a halo cut around and then just clean up the edge. And then I'll go through, post heat my corners, roll them over, get our recesses tucked and cut. And then you can kind of go through. If you have micro scratches on the surface from working the vinyl, you can take heat. You can take a lighter, heat gun, or let it sit out in the sun, and all those little micro scratches will work themselves out, since most 3M vinyl is self-healing or has self-healing properties. And then yeah, we have a nice wrapped hood there. Pretty cool color. So gonna move on to the next step of applying the livery, and that's gonna be just whatever livery you guys wanted to do. You could also hand cut scraps, or if you have another color, and then put them on how you want. Or if you have a plotter like I do and you make those shapes, you can use these and then start setting them on. And then I also have the white shapes I cut before. Get you guys on a different angle and we'll go from there. All right, here I'm going to put the chrome gold onto the drop shadows, and this will take a little precision, lining them up and then sticking them down. And then these will go on top on the livery. I'm going to peel the backing off. Do this hard one first. Hopefully you guys can see a little off, but it's going to work. So then maybe you can see it's going to let the chrome pop a lot more, having that satin black background. Wu-Tang, just because every RC car I've ever painted, put the Wu-Tang flag on. If this were being done like super professionally, yeah, I would have put registration marks that I could line up before wiping these down, but this looks like these might be off just a little bit, so I'm going to separate them. So I usually, if I'm only going to use two, I'll cut a few extra just in case I mess one up. It's easier to have them available in case. Shredcraft logo here, same thing, cut an extra in case one got messed up. I think that one's a little off, but get the idea. And now we have a drop shadow on our chrome gold for the livery later. Now I'm going to be moving on to, let's say, a more experimental phase where I'm going to try to lay the white on top of this green. So again, I'm going to get my fingerprints off the vinyl. Then I'm going to do this by hand. So I'm going to try to have this point and radius match up with the point and radius on the door card here. And this vinyl isn't as much forgiving. So I'm going to want to make sure I keep this long horizontal line straight. It's going to be a little more difficult. And then the idea is to have the long strip going up to the point on the door. So I'm going to apply some pressure, get that stuck there. Apply some heat to lock it in. And I did make a piece for the bottom, but I want to make sure, you'll have to forgive me, the battery died on the camera in the middle of sticking on the livery here, but overall I'm pretty happy with it. I think it turned out pretty good. But the only real way to tell will be to get these panels bolted back up to the car. So I'll go ahead and get the battery tray back on the doors, get this stuff all situated back onto the cage, and then we'll get some beauty shots of it all wrapped up. Got the body panels back on and saved the wheels for the beauty shots because I changed up some aspects of the wheels. I thought those blue bead lock rings were just a little much. So there is the base of the body panels. And then we'll throw the wheels on, get some beauties. I know that one was a long one, but I hope you guys were able to learn a few things and pick up a few tips and tricks on vinyl wrapping your RC cars. Overall, I'm pretty happy with it. I think that green turned out super cool with a little bit of a simple livery design on there. And I'm excited to get this thing back out on the rocks as soon as all the snow melts. But if you guys have any more questions, be sure to leave them down in the comments below. Don't forget to hit the thumbs up button if you like what you saw, if you're able to pick up some helpful tips, and I will catch you guys on the next video. Thanks for watching. See ya.